All right, today I will be doing lab 8-3. And to start, we're going to go and this is where we're going to be analyzing XBRL ratios. So we're going to go ahead and go to this link here. All right. Oh. We're going to make sure that we spell this correctly. And we're going to go ahead and hit enter. And here we are. So now we can see the Google Sheet with it. All right, so first thing we're going to do for this is we're going to go and make a copy of it. That way we can mess around with it. And we're going to go ahead and call it financial ratios. All right, and we'll make a copy. All right, so now you see here we have a copy of the sheet that we can actually go ahead and do some stuff with. And so first thing we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to change this to Tesla. And we're going to change this over to, one moment. All right, and for our most recent year, we're going to go ahead and say 2019. This is going to be for FY, so financial year. We're going to leave that the same. And then our first ticker is going to be F, as in F for Ford Motors. And then our second one is going to be GM, or General Motors. See here, we're pulling up our information. All right, and there we go. So now we have all our information. All right, and now we're just going to go ahead and do some analysis between the three companies. And we're going to go mostly stick to 2018 and 2019 because this is kind of what we have here for all three companies balance sheet wise. We can also see that we have liquidity ratios, financing, activity ratios, profitability, so some DuPont frameworks, and then just an overall summary of what the financial ratios are. All right, so let's go ahead and start looking through some of these. Let's take to 2019, and let's actually go to income statement because this will show kind of how well we've been doing over the year. So I think 2019 Tesla was a smaller name. They hadn't become as big yet. They're still figuring out their technology. So we can see that obviously their sales are lower than our established motor companies like Ford Motors and General Motors right here, which are having very high sales and coming out with net incomes. And so we can actually see here that Tesla actually displayed a net loss just because they were still developing their technology and they hadn't really kind of stepped up too much in marketing, and they haven't really gotten their name yet. So this is expected to see that we're showing losses for these last 4 years, whereas in Ford and General Motors, we're showing profits because these are established companies that people know. Let's actually go over to liquidity over here and kind of see what's going on. So it's like Tesla's liquidity ratios have actually, we started out with 0.86, so we dropped a little in 2018. So maybe we picked up a little bit more debt. And then in 2019, we actually went over 1. So Tesla was finally able to cover, their essentially their current debts with the current assets that they had. So if they went under, they were able to liquefy everything and still pay their whole debt plus 0.13 of the debt again. And then let's see here. For a quick ratio, this is an asset test. So this is essentially just our very liquid things. So like these are our cash and our accounts receivable. So very close to cash and cash equivalents, stuff that can immediately be turned into cash over our current liabilities. And we can see here that using this ratio, we aren't able to cover the current liabilities or the current debt that we have in the year, which is not to be too unexpected, seeing as how they were still a small company at this time. So we can go over here to our market comparison. And it's looking like between our three, our average is going to be a 1.06. And we actually see that GM has a pretty low current ratio, which is interesting to see from a established motor firm like them. So I guess they must be doing a lot of financing in order to, I guess, either do some expansions or maybe they're just focusing on using financing to fund operations rather than cash that's brought in through revenue and stuff. Here we can see Ford is also above 1. They're above board. Actually, I won't say above board. They're above 1, so they're able to pay off all their current debt and still have some left over. And same with Tesla here. So we can see here. And then using our quick ratio, we can actually see that Tesla is actually doing very well between the three. So it looks like Ford and General Motors, they don't necessarily keep a lot of cash or accounts receivable on hand. They might turn it into something else, to some other current assets to help fund their operations, whereas Tesla's kind of holding on to a little bit more cash and accounts receivable that we see here. And actually, if we go back over here, we can see that, let's see if we can find it. Accounts receivable. So 1324 and 6268. So it looks like they're holding on to a lot of cash here in 2019. And then it also looks like Ford has very little in their accounts receivable. So maybe at the time they had just collected a lot of their receivable accounts, or maybe they just don't do a lot of business on account. They maybe do a lot of cash business, because we do see a lot of cash here on hand. And then General Motors, they've got a little bit in their account receivable, and they've got a decent amount of cash on hand, so we can see that. And so we can see here that because Tesla had increased so much of their cash from last year, from 2018, that they're holding on to a lot of cash. And so we can see here that with our quick ratio, our average is a little bit lower than if we were to just do our current ratio. If we come over here to financing, so we can see here this financing ratios indicate Tesla's ability to pay its long-term debt. So these are talking about long-term debts rather than our short-term debts that we saw last time. And it looks like that Tesla has actually gone down in their financing ratio from 2017 to 2019. So we saw a little dip there, and a pretty steady dip too, from our total liabilities that we're taking over our shareholders' equity. So it could be that we're taking a lot more debt on as the years go to keep on financing the company. Because remember, Tesla's still a small company at the time, so there's not a lot of shareholders' equity. But we have to keep financing the company, so we're probably taking on a little bit more debt than usual. And then we can see here times interest earned. So we can see we're actually pretty negative on here, so we're not necessarily loaning out a lot of money these first 2 years. And then we have a little bit here, so maybe we're earning a little bit of money. We can see here that Tesla is the lowest and their total liabilities in their debt to equity ratio. That is because Ford and General Motors, these are large, public manufacturing companies, motor factoring companies, and these are established companies. So they're, I expect them to kind of have a higher debt to equity ratio because they're able to finance through other means. And then we can see times interest earned. So GM actually has their own financial wing called GM Financial, where they do a lot of lending money and some other stuff through financing like that. So they actually it's actually very very expected to see that their times interest earned is so high because GM has their own specific subsidiary that takes care of that for them. And then Tesla and Ford, I don't expect to see too high because these are car manufacturing companies. The only reason why I expected GM to be so high is because they have their own subsidiary that covers just that. Moving on to activity. So we can see here, activity ratio evaluates effectiveness in managing assets. So this is our net sales over average total assets, and we can see that we're going up. So we're making more sales over the year. This is our net sales over our accounts receivable. we've had some fluctuations here, so maybe we're maybe we're making some more sales in cash here rather than on account. And over here, maybe we had a lot of account sales. Average collection period. So we're seeing that, in 2019, our average collection period was about, we had about 17 collection periods. So that's our receivable turnovers or 365 divided by our receivables turnover. So we had about 17 collections within the year, and that's pretty good for them. Sorry, inventory turnover. So this is just how quickly they can sell inventory, and we can see that it's going up because the company is gaining more and more popularity from 2017 to 2019, and so we're expected to see a higher inventory turnover as we're going through. And then we're seeing a lower average days in inventory because as this number up here, our inventory turnover goes up, this number is going to go lower because our inventory is going to be spending less and less time in storage or in the company because we're going to be selling it much more. Kind of looking at market comparisons. This is a little interesting to see. This could be because maybe Tesla's selling their cars at a higher price because they were, at the time they're all electric, and so that's like a new, for the 2019 that was a new big thing that was kind of catching on, and it was a little bit more expensive to create the cars. So maybe we're seeing them sell them at a higher price. Receivable turnovers. This is a little interesting to see with Tesla being so high. And then we have with Ford being the highest and Tesla being the second highest. I actually expected Tesla to be a little bit lower and GM to be a little bit higher on theirs. We can see here that even though the receivable turnover was pretty low for GM, that they had a high turnover period. So essentially what that means is they're going to make 45 collections. And then here we can see inventory turnover. It's very high amongst Ford and GM because these are very established companies, and they're since they're so well known that they go through their inventory pretty quickly, and then the average days in inventory are obviously going to be a lot lower than Tesla's are. So profitability. So we can see here that obviously Tesla has not been profitable really in kind of any sense except for our equity multiplier. This is really because at these 2017, 2018, 2019, Tesla is not a well-known company. They're still gaining popularity. They haven't hit that big explosion that we saw in 2020 and 2021 when they became really, really popular and a lot of people started buying them. So this is to be expected here. And then we had some equity multipliers. So this is just kind of showing that our average total assets are about 5 times more than our average total equity. This is a little interesting to see over here. Our profit margin on sales being 0 for Ford and 0.05 for GM. And then we can kind of see our return on assets, pretty decent for these. And then our equity multiplier, it's kind of expected for Tesla to be low because Ford and GM, they're going to have a lot more total assets. They're going to have a lot more inventory on hand and everything, and they're going to be going through that. And with that should be the analysis of Tesla compared to Ford Motors and General Motors for 2018 and 2019. And with that is lab 8-3. Thank you very much.